mentioned already about eating lower on the food chain protects you against some pesticides and herbicides and also radiation. The research suggests about 96% of your exposure is actually eating higher on the food chain. Milk, fish, chicken, and dairy, 96%. Breast milk, a vegetarian, I didn't even say vegan, a vegetarian mother will have 1 to 2% pesticides and herbicides in her breast milk compared to a meat-eating woman. But that's very big. That's a big kind of significant statement. So, particularly with the radiation, we are talking about a significant decrease in fertility and what you're really passing on with all the mutations that come for it. I'll give you only one example. After Fukushima, like a year after Fukushima, 60% of kids 12 and under had type 2 diabetes. 60%. In this country, it's about 4%. 60% in Fukushima, yeah. So just give you an idea of the power of radiation. So we want to eat lower on the food chain. Most fish from the Pacific Ocean have lots and lots of radiation. That's been well proven and documented. And I just hold with that. So we got to protect the germ cell. And so when I say vegan and live food vegan is key for the survival of the species, I actually mean it. That's what we're talking about. Preserves personal health, vitality, and energy. We've already talked about that to a certain extent. The Harvard School of Public Health showed if you're just having 1 palm full of meat a day, your mortality rate will increase by 20%. That was with 120,000 people. That's a big, significant study. And rate of cancer is increased 10 to 13%, and rate of heart disease 19 to 21%. The Oxford study, again, eating meat, basically increased your rate of getting heart disease about 32%. In terms of a 12 mixed study, international study, showed that meat eating increased the rate of diabetes 35 to 50%. I'll just give you, we don't have to go too much further. Dr. Breckman, double, tripling the energy, so you get that. It goes across the board, really. Feeds the hungry. The research shows that vegan cuisine, if the whole world were vegan, we'd have enough food to feed the world 7 times over. And I estimate maybe 12 times over with live food. That's a longer discussion. All these are really interesting topics, but I'm giving the overview. Protects against animal cruelty. You're not spilling blood. And there's somewhere, the estimates vary, somewhere between 20, 30 billion animals are killed each year. And they're not so nice. Ecology is a big deal. You really need a vegan saves about a swimming pool 1.5 million gallons a year in terms of what water is needed just to produce vegan food versus carnivorous food, because the animals require a lot of grain, that requires a lot of water, and so forth. Air pollution from the manure, nitrous oxide. The nitrogen is 296 more times more global warming. Methane is 37 times more global warming. So carbon dioxide is really kind of a non-issue, and I guess as the more recent research shows, as they kind of cheated on the results, the whole carbon thing is, I think, needs to be questioned a little bit. I'll leave it like that. Maintains and protects the biocomputer mind, because if your mind is filled with pesticides, herbicides, and radiation, it really isn't going to work as well. And then you can't go beyond the mind. No, I'm going to skip. This is the radiation thing. That's okay. So I mentioned fertility rates. So between 2007 and 2009, there was a 9% drop in fertility, women 20 to 24, and 24 to 30 was a 3% drop. So it's dropping, okay? because we're not producing. And when your mind is working well, you're more likely to keep the consciousness of sovereignty rather than slavery. Okay? Now the niyamas and yamas and niyamas, 10 speakings, it's all about fulfilling the last 5. You know, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not bear false witness, and people like make it sound like Elsie and is so happy. You know who Elsie is?
Cow.
That's yeah, she's the cow, but it's more on the West Coast. She's happily giving a glass of milk, you know, but the cows used to live 25 to 35 years. Now they live 3 to 5 years. They're being milked to death, so they're not very happy, and they're going from 2,000 gallons to 50,000 gallons. So, you know, there's real cruelty in that, but that's a lie. Is what I'm saying, and it changes your perception because you think it's fine. She's so happy, yeah.
What if you're doing raw organic milk?
Doesn't matter. It's still milk cow. There's more to it, okay? People who drink milk have 3 times more lymphoma and leukemia. People who drink 1 to 3 glasses of milk have twice as much ovarian cancer, 2.4 times as much prostate cancer, double the amount of lung cancer, which I can't quite figure out, but that's what the statistics say. It's not a good deal. Plus, there's a whole lot, well, that's more, the lymphatic thing, and then there's a whole lot more diseases transferred, like mad cow disease. And there's also called bovine leukemia virus, which is not the same, but in the countries with the highest amount of milk drinking have the highest amount of leukemia among their, the population. So that's what we're talking about. So there are a lot of problems with raw milk versus and pasteurized milk too. And yeah, like hyperactivity, schizophrenia, those are all and can be increased if you're allergic, and certainly type 1 diabetes is somewhere between 11 and 13 times more enhanced if you're having milk before the 3 months from a cow. And that's a long story, but I won't go into it.
So is that all dairy products? Just milk you're talking about?
I'm talking about all dairy. Ice cream is about 25 times more concentrated. So milk's the least concentrated. So that's the milk thing. So, and then we have thou shalt not steal, and we kill the animals who sting their life, their fur, their flesh, their destinies. Okay, that's a few things. And thou shalt not covet, and really what goes on is meat eating is a hoarding of resources. We're talking about the air, we're talking about the earth. The animal agriculture accounts for 33% of the arable land. And most of the forest deforestation, goes on and on. The whole ecological thing is dramatic. Okay? So, okay, thou shalt not commit adultery. That's called sexual perversion. So how do you think you get the semen from the bull? So you get a transhuman animal interaction. How do you think you inseminate cows? The farmer is sticking his hand up the vagina of the cow. It's a transhuman. That's called a sexual perversion. The chickens, how do you think they get inseminated? Okay, it's not with a rooster. So you get what I'm trying to say. So there are many levels of this where it breaks down. Inner peace, important, clears the nadis and koshas, layers of the mind, so we become super connected with the divine. And again, diet most associated with spirituality. Holistic life with veganism is not about moral superiority. I think it's really important. It's about seeing the results of our actions. That's called wisdom. According to King Solomon, the wise person sees the results of their actions. Not that complicated. Now we have some mythical dangers. One is, how many heard about, from an acupuncture point, it creates spleen Qi deficiency? Anybody ever heard that? So we want to address it. So what is spleen Qi deficiency? You're going to decrease life force, decrease blood sugar balance, decrease digestion, decrease clarity of thinking. This is spleen Qi. Okay, I mentioned it. Weakness, blood sugar, diabetes, hypoglycemia. Yeah, what are we finding? It's the treatment for diabetes. And if you saw before, it increases dampness and candida. It increases good energy, feeling good and energized, stable blood sugar, endurance, stability, and ability to grow and learn, good memory and ability to study and remember facts. That's what live food does. So, good muscle tone and strength. Science evidence shows that live food cuisine is the cure for spleen Qi deficiency. Now, I'll tell you how it came about, but I don't want to spend too much time on it. It came about because in the 30s, China was having a serious drought, starvation, and if you were really, really poor, you could only afford a little white rice and a little vegetables, and that did create spleen Qi deficiency. But not live food, it's a different world, right? Different world now versus then. And the meat eaters did live longer and had more energy because they had more nutrition. They didn't live long enough, the vegetarians, they didn't live long enough to get cancer and heart disease. That's a China study, a little confusion there. They didn't live long enough. They didn't have enough nutrition. So that's a little bit of a tip-off about that. There are other good things about this. Okay, live foods create a vata imbalance. In India, we were taught that live foods did that, but what we're talking about is leafy greens. That's the prana. If you balance it with the ojas foods we have today, seed sauces, seed milks, seed pâtés, and all the things I listed, it doesn't happen.
So if you're just eating greens, like just salad,
like an Ann Wigmore approach, okay, you definitely can have a vata imbalance. So it's true, but not true, if you get what I'm saying. It's based on what people used to think what live food was about. Does that make sense, what I just said? Yeah. So I'll move on, because I don't want to spend time on it. Anti-live food fear propaganda. Am I getting enough lycopene? How many people have heard that one? Okay, lycopene is good for prostate and health and so forth. But first of all, it's not an essential nutrient. Second is, we don't even know what enough means. What we do know is, how much is necessary. So a raw tomato gives you 5 milligrams. Maybe that's sufficient. 2 tablespoons of tomato paste will do 13.7 milligrams. But that's a whole bunch of tomatoes in there, okay? And it's cooked and you lose a lot of the energy. Let's look at the other side. Excess of lycopene gives you immune system dysfunction, okay? Accelerates cancer of the prostate, makes it worse. Excess lycopene. Believed to increase the risk of lung cancer and other cardiovascular diseases, particularly in smokers. So now it's like life is complicated, but we can move out of fear about that. That's my point here. It causes intestinal problems, excess, bloating, gas, indigestion. Allergy reactions include hives and rashes. Too much lycopene makes you turn a little orange as well. So what I'm doing is saying, what's this fear about lycopene? You get plenty if you're doing live food, but are you going to get too much? Probably not. If you're going to cook a tomato, you will dehydrate it, will get more concentrated, but you also may have all these problems. Okay, this is the beta-carotene issue. It's definitely good. The carotenoid-rich fruits and vegetables are associated with reduced risks of cardiovascular disease and some cancers. That's really good news, okay? What happens if they have too much? So some of the controlled studies found that a high dose of beta-carotene supplements increased the risk of lung cancer in smokers and former asbestos workers. See, two sides of the story. We get a lot of false fears, is kind of what I'm saying. And then you can get too much to keratonemia, and again, causing blurred vision, dizziness, and so forth. I'm just making the point. Society is always taken by surprise by any new example of common sense. So what I'm trying to say in a not too subtle way is people can create all kinds of fears out there. But the bottom line is live food is really safe. What about for kids? Oh. So one of our master's students did a study. Studied 117 different pregnant mothers, and they found that at birth, the average live food or vegan baby was in the upper 2/3 of height and weight. It was the upper third of height and weight. That's good. I mean, height and weight is not subjective. In the first 4 years, the live food babies were in the 92nd percentile of weight and upper 2/3 in the body mass index and of height. So it's holding for 4 years, and that's really, really good news. So, you know, we have these fears, but we have the concrete realities as well. Now, everybody is deficient in DHA. 90% of pregnant mothers are deficient. How many live fooders are there? Well, we think there's maybe 2% vegans in this country. Live fooders, probably a lot less than that, okay? That's fine. So this is the general population that we're talking about is deficient in DHA. 80% are deficient in magnesium, same thing. We're really talking about a big deal here. 95% in this country are deficient in iodine, okay? That's primarily statistics with meat eaters, but it probably applies to live fooders as well. Most everybody sees deficient in iodine, but you get what I'm saying, right? And the B12 is the same thing. So we have 40% of meat eaters at the lowest. We kind of discussed that. And 80%, you know, of vegans and live fooders. But then you go to the 400 to 450, double to get optimum, and you're probably 80% of meat eaters are deficient. So everybody's deficient. And everybody needs to individualize their diet, but it's not specific to vegans or live fooders. That's my point. And carnosine, again, even though it's only in meat, everybody is deficient. You need 1,000 milligrams of carnosine, and you can't get that unless you're eating 3 steaks a day, and there aren't a lot of people doing that. In minerals, 1936, 99% of Americans are deficient in minerals. It's not just vegans and live fooders. It's everybody. And then up to 85% of all Americans are deficient in vitamin D. So what I'm trying to say, the arguments are really slanted. Oh, vegans are low in vitamin D. Yeah, well, 85% of the American public is. So everybody basically needs to have this level in these areas of supplementation. So that's key to being successful. You have to supplement. If soils are weak, there are a lot of problems. Vitamin K is another thing. And 50% of individuals aren't able to convert the beta carotenes to vitamin A. So people need vitamin A as well, okay? Because you may be in the unlucky 50%. So I don't know. We don't know that. That's the thing. Okay, so I'm making a point that everybody really needs to have a certain amount of supplementation, minerals and this and that. There's lots of natural things out there that actually really take care of this. So we're not going to get, this isn't about supplementation. It's about making a point here. So don't get bought into, oh, vegans are low in B12. No, forget it. Live fooders and vegans are low in B12, but so are meat eaters. And on and on and on. You just saw it.
Can you say why no legumes and beans, even if sprouted?
What?
Can you say why no legumes and beans, even if sprouted?
Because they are hard to digest. They have anti-hemagglutinins and antitrypsins, and we don't like people getting gas and bloating. It's not your best experience. That's why, you know, really. Sprouting is better, but we still observe on a pretty consistent basis, that was still harder to digest. It didn't get rid of all the antitrypsin, anti-hemoglobin factors. Okay, so what's this? 54% milk, fat in breast milk. That should be a clue. Okay, cholesterol facts. And one Norwegian study, there's 52,000 people. Okay, women with a cholesterol of 270. Okay, I didn't say 170, I said 270, live 28% longer than women with a cholesterol of 193 or less. Did you hear what I just said? Isn't that amazing? So it starts to say, well, this doesn't sound right. Okay, men, it didn't make that much difference, one way or the other. But women definitely benefited with a higher cholesterol. Okay? What they're called meta-analysis is 21 studies, 340,000 adults. No difference between the risk of heart disease between the people with the lowest and highest saturated fat. Okay? Archives of Internal Medicine is the AMA journal. And 2009, in this very, very good study, the review of all the evidence for the last 30 years concluded that for both randomized and cohort studies, that there was no evidence to support the widespread mythical belief, okay, I want to say that limiting saturated fat intake is beneficial or protective for heart disease health or longevity. Geez, you know, people have been going crazy over that, and I can see why the vegan world would tend to say, wow, you know, it's going to ruin our story. Doesn't really ruin the story. 80% of your cholesterol is made by your own liver anyway. Doesn't ruin the story at all. You can get adequate, and this is my concern, you can get adequate cholesterol on a vegan diet, so it doesn't ruin it. And it doesn't make the story, but it doesn't ruin it. Now, published in The Lancet, very good, you know, 724 elderly people, average age 89, okay, and they study their death rate. And here's what they found. For every 39-point increase in your cholesterol, you live 15% longer. Obviously, they picked a group of people that were going to die off pretty quickly, so they got a pretty good study. So cholesterol helps with longevity. Oh, well, that's good. High cholesterol is associated with better memory function. That's been proven again and again. At Columbia, before any of this stuff got going, we knew that a low cholesterol was associated with increased suicide and depression. As I've sorted through it, people in the lowest cholesterol levels have 6 times higher the rate of suicide. Now we have a problem. I'm not, you know, that's like, wow, this low cholesterol thing can really get out of hand. Double and 6 times the rate of depression, and above the 25%, around that level, doubles the rate of suicide. That's serious. That's why, you know, as a psychiatrist, besides everything else, it's like, wait, we do not want to go low cholesterol here, you know. If anything, if you're below 159, I'm going to supplement you with coconut oil and raise your cholesterol to a safe zone. That's what I'm going to do, because I know you're totally safe up to 270. Okay? Okay, this is what I just said, okay, emotional and mental physical health. Here are the problems with low cholesterol. Increases emotional imbalance, depression and suicide, violent behavior because your mind doesn't work right, increases the incidence of stroke. That's really serious. Accidents, hormonal imbalances, because the cholesterol is the foundation for the hormone, which affects all your emotional function, right? You don't have enough cholesterol, you don't have enough proper hormones to make your body work right. Memory loss and Parkinson. So it's like, oh, so this is a big deal. The cholesterol thing is a big deal, and really, I strongly do not recommend a low cholesterol diet to anybody.
Affects the eyes. They find with statin use it increases cataract.
Yeah, and there's a list of things with statins.
I was just going to say, yeah, why do they keep, you know, giving it to people?
Well, actually, a lot of doctors haven't really read the whole thing.
Apparently.
The holistic physicians do not use statins,
Exactly.
by and large. Yeah. Okay, so here's the cholesterol references. So you get that this is a what my statements are well researched. And actually I condensed it down. But look at this, references, references, references. So
what do
it,
you treat with Dr. Cousens?
what?
What do you treat people with? What type of fat? What type of fats do you use?
Well, raw plant fat.
Avocados, coconut oil?
Yeah. And some people are really against oils, but you know, I like the nuts and seeds. They're pretty high in the oils and so forth.
What about red palm oil?
It's okay. I'm not as experienced with it, so I can't make too much. In Nigeria, we have a whole women's group doing a whole palm oil factory and collecting it, you know, so it's good for the diabetics. You know, we're building infrastructure to supply the food. They need that. But look how we're going here. Okay, now omega-3, same thing. Your low-fat diet is also going to create low omega-3s. And you may have seen in the news recently that the people who committed suicide in Afghanistan and Iraq had the lowest amount of long-chain omega-3s. So it's the same issue with that. So the long-chain omega-3s have been shown to improve cognition, improve emotional balance, and postmenopausal women will be happy to hear this. People have adequate long-chain omega-3s, they don't stay in stress as long. It's a very interesting finding. It's like, it's easy to get in stress and stay in stress postmenopausal, and the research shows that if you have adequate long-chain omega-3s, you go only halfway, which is really very important for longevity, because the cortisol is called the death hormone. So if that amount of secretion is cut in half, that's really a good thing. So just making a point in there, people definitely live longer with the omega-3s. They're the preferred energy and the ketones for brain and heart function. Okay? And it may be an underlying factor of up to 96,000 premature deaths a year. So that's why I don't hear about low-fat diet. We want the raw plant-based fat. That's it. That's the most important thing. Decreases risk of premature death up to 85%. Very important part of brain tissue. Most women who are low in the long-chain omega-3s, they have the highest amount of postpartum depression. And actually, I wrote a book called Depression Free for Life, and my results with postpartum depression is 100% really. Excuse me, and that's because I give them that DHA. Just to give you an idea of what we're talking about. DHA, not DHA. What? DHA, yeah. I said DHEA, but I meant DHA. Okay. So this is important. Also, your brain and eye development requires DHA, long-chain omega-3. And you can get that from yellow algae. Same place the fish get it from. And there are two plant sources, purslane and the blue-green algae of the long-chain omega-3s. And then the next is DHA, which is pretty much what I recommend to everybody. Almost everybody's low in DHA. Okay? And I hate to say it's a no-brainer, but that's what happens. You do not have as much brain power. Okay? It's important for pretty much all the major neurotransmitters. Acetylcholine for memory, GABA, which has anxiety, serotonin, norepinephrine. All the systems do better with adequate DHA. Couldn't be clearer. And EPA plays a role, but not as major. Okay? So I use it for bipolar as well. We're not here to talk about treatment. I'm trying to give you the broad strokes. And we do have it available. You can just say drcousens.com is the website, and we have it available at our pharmacy. You know, a good quality DHA, what I feel is the best. There are few ones out in the market. Here's the trouble with low DHA, impulsivity, hostility, aggression. This cortisol jump reduces Parkinson's disease, improves nerve health. Best fuel for the heart. If you have atrial fibrillation, it will cut down the death rate by 85%. These are really important statements. This is why I'm not in favor of a low-fat diet. 25 to 45% is what I'm recommending, depending on your constitution, not 10%. Okay. Basically good for your risk factors, and thins the blood. Okay. Protects you from cancer of the skin, cancer of the breast by about 50%, and also cancer of the prostate. So it's like we don't want to go low fat. Okay. Again, references. This is a lot of work, so you can see I condensed it down for you. It's a much, in my book, There's a Cure for Diabetes, the second edition, I have a much longer discussion, but you can see this is not a little bit.
So your omega-3 is coming from algae?
Primarily, yes. The yellow algae.
Wow.
Now, carbohydrates in the diet. So this is all very interesting, because you remember pretty much how many you've been told for a vegan, you need a high complex carbohydrate, low fat, low protein diet. Just raise your hand, I'm just curious. Okay. Oh, not that much, okay.
Because that was, used to be.
Yeah.
That used to be.
Yeah, I
So
remember that.
this is a more educated group, very good. And a lot of people really believe that, and still the religion in a lot of the vegan world, okay? So, Taoist emphasis. First, if you mix and smoke and fire, your body will not walk on the jewel pond. Meaning live food is the key diet for Taoists. But this is by the Immortal Sister, Secret Teaching of Taoist Women. So that's an important little statement there. This is the 11th century. Taoism goes back to 475 BC in terms of this position. Also bigu, no grains. That just, particularly the gluten and gliadin grains are a big problem. They had to figure out 475 BC, the Taoist. Okay, so bigu means avoiding cereals in order to gain immortality. Immortality means liberation. Ordinary foods or grains block the path to transcendence. That's basically the teaching. And if we understand a little bit about the gluten gliadin thing, it does inflame the brain. It does aggravate the digestion system, the colon, and it also is associated with increased rates of diabetes and insulin resistance. That's not so good. Bigu, that's the thing. These are the three worms, and that could be what they saw, but is basically, you know, you got parasites, and you got diabetes, you got candida. So they were obviously observing that a lot of grains makes you not so healthy. Plus it blocks the liberation process. A little bit about diabetes degenerative syndrome, which I talk about in my book on diabetes, which is one of the bigu demons. People with a fasting blood sugar above 86 have increased rates of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, neurological and brain degeneration, and also cancer. So a study of about 40,000 people showed that 80% of people above 60 are, or let's say middle age is what they said, have blood sugars above 86. So it's a, I'm going to skip through this. There's a lot of problems with that. Boston University and study at men and women showed people with the highest cholesterol levels scored higher on cognitive tests than those with lower cholesterol levels. That slipped in there. But so you can just see, I'm just going through it. Here's the fructose issue. Because most people think fructose is okay. Well, not really. So this is Gary Taubes. Even though fructose has no immediate effect on blood sugar and insulin, over time it's likely to cause insulin resistance and thus increase the storage of calories and fat. But it really increases your diabetes because it dysregulates your insulin and your leptin resistance. Leptin signaling, which causes leptin resistance and insulin resistance, which are the primary driving engines behind diabetes, type 2 diabetes.
Does that mean that, like, no fruit, only
No, but we'll get to that. We're going right there. Basically, the answer is between 15 and 25 grams a day of fructose is safe, and particularly, you want it from fruit, not high fructose corn syrup. So it's not a no fruit thing, okay? It's 2 bananas, it's, a few kiwis, it's a modest amount of fruit each day. Above 25 grams, I think we're looking at trouble. And I'll just put it that way. And I think more and more people are beginning to see that because fructose inflames the brain. Cancer cells, like glucose, 10 to 50 times more than other components, and they like fructose 10 times more than they like glucose. And fructose also inflames the glia cells of the brain, which are your communicating cells, 10 times greater than glucose. So we got a little bit of understanding.
What about the raw fruitarians?
Well, I'm talking about them. Now, but here's the thing to understand, and it really is worth understanding. We are unique individuals. Some people do not metabolize glucose, fructose very well. And therefore, they need actually more glucose, fructose, more fruit, and so forth, to be able to get some glucose and fructose into their system. And the people with the worst ability to metabolize it may end up being fruitarians. You see what I'm saying? So we got to understand, everybody's unique. There's no one diet that is for everybody. So this, what I'm teaching, leaves room for fruitarians because they have, the poorest ability to convert glucose, fructose into energy. And therefore, they need more. Did everybody follow that? Mm-hmm. So, okay. So, fructose facts, it damages your memory and learning ability. It does inflame the brain, okay? Excess fructose is really metabolized in the liver. It is the leading cause of non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, okay? And obviously diabetes. And when they introduced high fructose corn syrup, there's a 90% increase in diabetes in that 2 years. Okay, more active in creating ages. And this is the whole cancer thing because cancer in these organs, okay, breast, prostate, ovaries, rectum, colon, pancreas are all associated with excess glucose, which causes excess insulin. And insulin is an anabolic hormone, which then causes cancer, more specifically in these organs. That's what that's about. Anabolic hormones are controlled by insulin, which is why insulin resistance causes the problem. Okay, so I'm just going to skip a little bit for a second. So this is, again, in 33,000 men, a glucose level of more than 86 was associated with a 38% increase, okay, in digestive tract cancer. So I'm just kind of making a point again and again that we have a problem here. With a Swedish study, it was concluded that the risk of cancer escalated in direct correlation with blood sugar levels. Couldn't be any clearer. So a live food diet with a lot of sugar to kind of compete with taste really isn't in anybody's favor. It's not necessary, because the truth is, when you actually go to vegetables, your whole taste system changes. You move out of leptin resistance. Leptin resistance says, crave sweets, put on fat. When you go into normal leptin, it says, it changes your taste, so you don't want sweets. Your taste literally changes, what I'm saying. So even bitter vegetables, quote, taste a little sweet. That's really important to understand, that there's a change in it. Okay. This is the thing I mentioned about that cancer decreased from 2.7 to 4% in this study of 525 people. That's significant. Okay? Endometrial cancer, same thing. We're confirmed between a risk between non-insulin dependent increased risk of endometrial cancer, and that basically all increased with high blood sugar from the high insulin. Okay. Okay, same with the colorectal cancer. And we go on and on. Okay. Those who added sugar to their foods or beverages at least 5 times daily had a 70% higher risk of developing pancreatic cancer. So we got to really consider that sugar isn't about just diabetes here. We've got to consider it's about heart disease and cancer. Okay, this is it, the 15 to 25 grams. In summary, here's what we're looking at. Increased chronic diabetes, degenerative disorder, heart disease, high blood pressure, obesity, gout, kidney stones, depression, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, brain inflammation, cancer, and accelerated aging. This is not too positive about fructose. Okay, it's not, like free. It's not a freebie. And here's again references, that this is well established. It's not like one study as an exception. So we're going to end now, as we're talking about Thomas Edison. The chief function of the body is to carry the brain around. Just think about that, particularly for spiritual life. It's like, you got to carry the brain around. So, all degenerative conditions, including brain disorder, is about inflammation. Gluten, gliadin, grains, glucose, fructose, all inflame the brain. That's the point. Okay? Gluten and a high carbohydrate diet stimulate inflammatory pathways of the brain. That's Dr. Perlmutter. People whose blood sugar is at the high end have a much greater risk for brain shrinkage. People in their 70s who have a high carbohydrate diet actually have 4 times more cognitive decline. These are serious issues. Yeah.
So if you have an elderly gentleman who's starting to lose his memory, getting him off anything that has excess of sugars, like sugar in coffee or sodas or whatnot,
Right.
would that increases or just stop the degeneration?
Well, it depends what the cause is. But sometimes we find that in Alzheimer's disease, stopping the sugar because your brain has insulin resistance and ag and coconut oil will actually help reverse the Alzheimer's. So there are some variations because they're different causes. Okay, when blood sugar goes up, neurotransmitters go down. That's an easy guide. Okay? So again, brain size loss increases with people with the highest A1C, which is the amount of glucose that's fused with hemoglobin. Okay? So that's key. And this is Perlmutter, again, a diet heavy in inflammatory carbohydrates and low healthy fats messes with the mind. It's not an elegant statement from a scientific point of view, but it makes the point. Okay? Nature made sugar hard to get, man made it easy. Fat, not carbohydrate, is the preferred fuel of human metabolism and has been for the human evolution. That's key. But again, you can do this all in live food. Okay? Fat doesn't make you fat. In fact, avocados, if you have one avocado a day, it decreases your incidence of heart attack by 17%. And it also creates weight loss, around 15%. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Here's what I'm recommending. 25 to 45% plant-based raw fat. Cooked fat moves from cis to trans and doesn't work so well. 10 to 20, but I'm really saying more like 10 to 15% raw protein. And 25 to 45% greens, sprouts. That's your really best carbohydrates. And that's in vegetables and tomatoes and everything. Okay.
So the fat is avocado, nuts, seeds.
And coconut oil as needed to raise your cholesterol.
Or olive oil, olives.
Yeah. So olives are good. Olive oil has some interesting peculiarities. It's been shown to help decrease blood pressure, but it also creates, if you just have a slug of it, a 36% arterial constriction. Not good. But when you take it with a salad, that doesn't happen.
When you
Because
take it with the what?
a salad,
Oh, right.
which is mostly when you're using olive oil. Okay, so I'm just making a point. But by itself isn't a freebie either.
And what about ghee butter? That's
Well,
dairy.
Ghee is dairy. That's the problem. And it's got all kinds of problems with dairy. And dairy is now an exploitive industry, so to speak. I just put it that way. It's LCR cow and so forth. There are no sacred cows left. Okay?
Maybe in India.
No, not even in India.
No.
They're really, yeah. So I don't want to talk about India too much, but for reversal of diabetes, I do 25 to 35. But in general, once the diabetes is healed, 25 to 45%. Food's energy. Most important measure of your health is how you consistently feel over a long period of time. So we have to kind of look at that aspect. Like what works? Again, we can go into the details how to individualize your diet, but the key is you do have to do that. You've got to regulate your protein, fat, carbohydrate intake, quality of those. And I'd like to see more and more of that happening in the live food vegan movement, where we understand that we are unique individuals. We have 20,000 genes with probably a few 100,000 variations. You'd think we would see that we have to make it specific to who we are. And I think more and more of that is really happening. So that's me after 40-day fast. You know, you become a superconductor of the divine. And finally, you know, in each generation, we're given the medicine for the healing of that generation. And the live food veganism is indeed the medicine for healing this generation and future generations. So that's the summary of that. And it's good to share that with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good.